The crowd inside the massive auditorium buzzed with excitement. It was another night of auditions, another chance for dreams to be made or broken. The judges sat ready, smiling, laughing, and chatting among themselves. Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair, holding a cup of coffee, scanning the stage that was about to reveal another hopeful performer. The audience cheered as the next contestant walked out, but the energy suddenly softened when they saw a small, shy figure step into the bright lights. He was just a boy, thin, dark-haired, wearing simple clothes that looked a little too big for him. He nervously held the microphone in both hands, his knees almost trembling. The boy's name was Elijah, a 13-year-old from Manila, Philippines. The crowd quieted as Simon looked up, intrigued by how young he seemed. Elijah blinked, squinting slightly against the lights, and smiled shyly. When asked where he was from, his voice trembled. He said he came from Manila, a place full of music but also full of hardship. The judges asked if this was his first time performing on such a big stage. Elijah nodded, his eyes reflecting both fear and excitement. He said he had been singing on the streets since he was 8 to help his mother buy food. There was something in his voice that made everyone fall silent. It wasn't just what he said, but how he said it, the innocence, the sincerity, and the weight of a life that seemed too heavy for such a young boy. When Simon asked what song he would be singing, Elijah hesitated for a second, took a deep breath, and whispered, "A song I sing for my father." The audience murmured. He explained softly that his father had passed away 2 years ago, and he never got the chance to say goodbye. Every time he sings this song, he feels like his father is still listening. The room grew silent. The judges looked at him with sympathy, and even Simon, known for his tough demeanor, softened a little. Then the lights dimmed. A single spotlight shone on Elijah as soft piano music began to play. He closed his eyes and held the microphone close to his lips. And then, he began to sing. From the very first note, something magical happened. His voice was pure, trembling slightly at first, but filled with emotion that could break even the hardest heart. It was clear that he wasn't just singing, he was telling a story, his story. The pain in his voice echoed across the silent hall, the kind that comes only from someone who has truly lived what they're singing about. The lyrics spoke of loss, love, and hope, and every word seemed to come from deep inside his heart. The audience sat frozen. Some people had tears in their eyes before the first verse even ended. The camera panned across faces, mothers, fathers, teenagers, all completely drawn into his voice. Simon leaned forward, his hand covering his mouth, his eyes fixed on the boy who stood there, pouring out his soul. When Elijah reached the chorus, his voice cracked slightly, but that only made it more real. He took a deep breath and pushed through, his expression full of pain and passion. By the time he reached the final verse, his voice grew stronger, rising with every word, as if he was speaking to his Father in heaven. His small hands gripped the microphone tightly, and a tear rolled down his cheek as he finished the final line. The piano stopped. Silence filled the room. Then, the crowd erupted into applause. The audience jumped to their feet, clapping and cheering wildly. Some judges had tears streaming down their faces. Simon sat still for a moment, visibly emotional. Then he stood up, applauding with the rest of them. Elijah stood there, overwhelmed, looking at the cheering crowd. He wiped his eyes, trying to hold back tears. He looked both stunned and grateful. The judges couldn't speak for a moment, they just looked at each other in awe. Finally, Simon spoke. He told Elijah that what he had just witnessed wasn't just singing, it was storytelling, honesty, and pure emotion. He said that it reminded him why this show exists, to find people like him who sing from the soul. He asked Elijah how long he had been performing, and Elijah shyly said that he sang on the streets after school, sometimes in markets or in front of restaurants, hoping someone would drop coins in his box. His mother always told him to keep singing no matter how hard life got. One of the judges, holding back tears, asked him what his dream was. Elijah answered softly, "To buy my mother a real house. Somewhere she can sleep without hearing the rain through the roof." The audience gasped, and someone in the front row started crying. Simon looked away for a moment, clearly emotional. Then, before anyone could say another word, one of the judges pressed the golden buzzer. The crowd exploded. Gold confetti filled the air, raining down over Elijah as he covered his face in disbelief. His knees buckled as tears poured down his cheeks. He looked up, watching the golden lights swirl around him like a dream come true. The judges stood up and clapped, smiling and crying at the same time. Simon walked onto the stage, putting his arm around the boy, whispering something in his ear that made him cry even harder. The cameras zoomed in on his face, tears, laughter, disbelief, the emotions of a child who had lived too much pain and was finally seeing a miracle happen. The audience kept clapping, chanting his name. His mother was shown backstage, crying uncontrollably, covering her mouth with both hands as she saw her son being celebrated like a star. After the show, Elijah became a global sensation overnight. Videos of his performance went viral. Millions watched and commented, saying they couldn't stop crying. People from all around the world wanted to know more about the little boy from Manila who had moved them to tears with just one song. But behind that performance was a story of struggle, faith, and unimaginable strength. Elijah grew up in one of Manila's poorest neighborhoods, small wooden shacks, crowded streets, and families struggling to survive. His mother worked long hours washing clothes and selling vegetables just to afford food for the day. They didn't have electricity at times, and Elijah studied under a streetlight or by candlelight. But every night, he would sing. He would stand outside, singing songs he heard on the radio, using a small plastic microphone he found in the trash. His neighbors would gather around, listening, smiling, and clapping. Even when he was tired or hungry, Elijah said singing made him forget everything, it made him feel alive. His father used to play the guitar, and when he passed away, Elijah promised himself that he would continue his father's music. Sometimes, he and his mother would go to church, and Elijah would sing hymns. People began to notice his voice. Some would record him on their phones and post online. That's how he was discovered by a local talent scout who suggested he audition for the big stage. But Elijah was scared. He didn't believe someone like him could stand in front of world-famous judges. His mother told him, "If you can sing to the world from the streets, you can sing to the world from a stage." And so he tried. He borrowed clothes from a friend, practiced every night, and prayed before he left Manila. When he stood on that stage for the first time, he wasn't just singing for himself, he was singing for every child who dreamed in the darkness. After the golden buzzer, Elijah was invited to perform on the semifinals. The world was waiting. When he appeared again, the crowd screamed his name. This time, he looked more confident, but his eyes still held that same humble spark. He said he would be performing another song, one that he wrote himself, dedicated to his mother. The lights dimmed again. A soft melody began. Elijah's voice rose, tender and emotional, as he sang about sacrifice, love, and the endless strength of a mother. Each note carried gratitude and pain, and by the time he reached the chorus, the audience was in tears again. The camera caught Simon's eyes glistening. The lyrics spoke about a child promising his mother that one day, he would build her a home, the dream he had always carried. When he finished, the crowd went wild again. Even the judges couldn't contain their emotions. Simon stood up, clapping hard, and said, "You've done it again. You've reminded us that greatness doesn't come from perfection, it comes from truth." Elijah became an international inspiration. News outlets featured his story. Fans from all over the world sent messages and donations. Some even helped his mother buy a small house in Manila, a simple home, but one made with love and hope. Elijah's dream had come true. But what made people love him even more wasn't just his voice, it was his humility. He never forgot where he came from. In interviews, he would always thank his mother, his neighborhood, and everyone who believed in him. He said he still sings the same way he did on the streets, with all his heart. Months later, during the show's finale, Elijah returned for a special performance. He walked out onto the stage, now more confident, wearing a white suit and holding a guitar. The crowd cheered like never before. Simon smiled, saying, "Welcome back, superstar." Elijah laughed shyly and said, "I'm just Elijah, sir." The audience melted. Then he began to sing one last song, a song about hope, about believing in yourself when no one else does. As he sang, videos of his journey played on the big screen behind him, the streets of Manila, his small home, his first audition, his mother crying backstage. It was a full circle moment. His voice soared higher, stronger, and more beautiful than ever. By the time he finished, everyone was on their feet again. The entire hall echoed with cheers and applause. Simon walked on stage, hugged him, and said, "You made the world cry with one song. But more than that, you made us believe again." Elijah's mother was brought on stage. She hugged her son tightly, both of them crying. The cameras captured the moment, the dream of a boy from the streets who sang his way into the hearts of millions. After the show, the clip became one of the most watched performances of the year. It trended for weeks, and thousands of fans shared stories of how Elijah's music gave them hope during their darkest days. Some said his song helped them reconnect with loved ones they'd lost. Others said it inspired them to chase their dreams no matter how impossible they seemed. Elijah continued singing, not for fame, but for love, the love of his father, the love of his mother, and the love of every soul that ever believed in something greater than their pain. He began performing at charity concerts, raising money for poor children in the Philippines. He even visited schools and orphanages, singing and telling kids never to give up on their dreams. In one interview, when asked what success meant to him, he said quietly, "Success is when your voice can make someone feel less alone." The host looked at him, speechless. That line would go viral too, shared across social media, written on posters, and quoted by celebrities. Years later, Elijah would return to the same stage as a guest performer. This time, he was taller, more confident, but still humble. The host asked him if he remembered that first night, when he was just a scared boy singing about his father. Elijah smiled and said, "I remember. I was terrified, but I knew my father was listening." Then, he sang that same song again, the one that had made the world cry. And once again, it did. The judges stood up, the audience wiped tears, and Simon Cowell, with a smile on his face, said softly, "He's still making the world cry with one song." The story of Elijah became a legend, not just of a boy who could sing, but of a boy who turned pain into beauty. His journey reminded millions that even the smallest voices can create the loudest echoes when they come from the heart. And as his final notes faded into the applause, the golden lights sparkled once again, like stars shining just for him. Because sometimes, all it takes is one song, one moment, and one heart full of hope to make the entire world believe again.